What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we're gonna start, when I say start, we're gonna see how far we get. This will probably be over the course of a couple days, but we are going to start tearing down the engine inside of the Suburban. However, we're gonna be doing most of that outside. We've got some pretty decent weather here, like mid 70s. It's nice and cool. And honestly, guys, I don't want to drag it in the shop, but I am going to show you, I did rearrange some stuff in the shop recently. And so I've got things sitting in different places than they normally would. But either way, I want to get started on the Suburban. But before we go out there and start tearing into it, because guys, I really want to get that motor loosened up so I can get the torque converter bolts out. I do not want to have to try to pull that block or the trans apart, like basically pulling the motor off the converter or the other way around. But either way, I want to get down, I want to get the heads off is ultimately what I'd like to do in this video, to see if maybe we can see what's going on with that last spark plug that you guys saw in the last video on this thing. But you've already seen me tear down the motor, and we're going to start cleaning it up and reassembling the new one very soon. But let's take a look here and see what we've changed up in the shop. You can see, guys, that we've moved some stuff, cleaned some stuff up. We've got the C10 kind of in its normal spot, but now we have the trailer back up against the back wall. We've got the green truck here. I wanted to keep this stuff up here basically mobile, so if I need to use the trailer, I just pull these two out, get the trailer out of place. Of course, this truck runs, the Corvette runs. You'll also notice that we have the Trans Am up here on the lift because I want to do some stuff on the bottom side of it, which you'll be seeing in videos coming up, obviously. And then, guys, we've got the 1500 over here, and I've kind of rearranged where my parts and stuff are. I've kind of got it backed into the corner. Still got the stuff for the dash swap and the NNBS truck that my son daily drives. Got that stuff setting up there. I'd like to get that knocked out in a video very soon. You can see we still got the motor that we disassembled that's going to go in the Suburban. So yeah, change some stuff around out here, but we've got stuff scattered out. And like I said, I want to start disassembling some stuff on this guy out here. And we're gonna start by unhooking the battery. Look, this thing's locked up. We don't need the battery hooked up. So we're gonna take the cover off the top here, get it out of place. And then we're gonna unhook the battery, which should just be a 10 millimeter. I'm gonna unhook the positive and the negative because, well, we're not gonna need it for a while. No sense in it being hooked up. Let's get that done, and then we're gonna move on to getting the intake out of place, or at least, I don't know if I'll take the whole box out, but I'd like to unplug some stuff. I don't think I'll take the box out, but we'll at least get the intake tube unhooked so we can get that out of the way, and then start tearing into some other parts here. Once you get the battery unhooked, I've got this guy loosened. We need to loosen this one. I'm just gonna pull the intake all as one unit. At least that's what I'm hoping. There are a few plugs that I also unplugged. So like this guy that goes in here, and then your upper radiator hose will fit into the bottom of it. So once we get that loose, we should be able to pull this guy out of place. And it's ginormous, so we'll try to get it out of here and set it in the shop. All right, the next thing I think I'm gonna go after are any of the plugs on the top of the intake here. So we're gonna get this guy, I think that's the map sensor. I'm going to get this plug release, but before I do that, I need to take these 3 tins out, and there is a tin here to get this wiring harness somewhat loose. And then I'm gonna get the alternator. So we're gonna get a pick and open up this connection that's holding the wire that goes over to the alternator. We can go ahead and unplug the alternator as well. I'm gonna take it off, get it out of the way. I believe, guys, this is a 13, oh, actually that looks like a 10 to hook the alternator up, and these are all 10s up top. Now, I got this plate off. Now so you can see our harness is loose, at least on the top of the intake. I also took the 15 millimeters out that hold our alternator in. And I'm trying to keep this stuff separate so I know, what came off of what motor and what came off of the other. Probably need a pry bar to get this thing loose. We'll take it in the shop. And then I think the next thing I'm gonna attack is, let's go ahead and slide that out and get it out. And then we're gonna work our way probably up our injectors, which you guys saw in the video. If we slide our little green clip up and then pinch that harness, that one is being a little difficult, there we go. They come right out, and we'll work our way all the way to the back. I like to have this out of the way when I'm doing this. You don't have to do it this way, but we're just kind of going back and forth taking stuff off. I'm gonna get that injector, that last injector unplugged. I'm gonna do the same thing down this side. Oh, and the coil pack, let's just go ahead and do it too. Pull our little safety out, unplug that guy. There we go. Now I've got a 15. I'm gonna take this ground, see the ground that goes up to the battery and the ground that comes to the front side of this harness, and we'll have this whole harness on this side loose from the motor. Once we got that undone, I did go ahead and unhook all these like hard line plastic lines. There's a little clip on the back side. If you push, it'll release it. So I released it there. I also released it on the back side of this guy, which I guess is an evap solenoid, my guess. And then there's another one that goes from the top of the intake here in the middle to the back of the head. Same situation. There's a little clip, a little slide clip on one side. And when you pull that clip, you can lift up and get it disengaged. So now let's pull that off. And we're actually gonna pull this guy out. Okay. And then we need to get our fuel rail disconnected. So we need the fuel rail disconnect tool, which slides in there and allows us to unlock this rail. And then guys, I think we're to the point where obviously I'm gonna get a bungee cord to hold this up out of the way, but we've got to go through and get our, I think they're 8mm, if I remember correctly, they are. So we'll get the 8mm intake bolts out, and hopefully the intake will be loose. I can't remember, but I don't think there's anything on the backside plugged into the intake. So once we get those loose, the fuel rail loose with the disconnect tool, I'll show you that here in just a second. Once we get that disconnected, then I'm gonna go ahead and hit those 8mm, and then we'll start to drag this thing out. I'm gonna show you this tool. This is what it looks like, and it slides in there, and I'm gonna have to have two hands. I don't think I can do it with one hand, but you're gonna push in with the tool. You're gonna pull the line in, push the tool in, and then pull the line out. Went through and so I got the fuel line disconnected. I've got all the bolts loose from the intake, and you can see I've got my wire somewhat like just pulled up a little bit to give me a little bit additional clearance. So now I need to drag that out, but remember we're taking this guy with it, our brake booster, right? So don't forget to get it. But it should just drag straight out. You're gonna have to lift it up a little and kind of sneak it out. You can see why I wanted to remove the alternator. Just makes life a little easier. If you'll notice, this has had intake gaskets put on it, which is kind of surprising. Generally, holy cow, those things are stuck in there. They're Felpros. Anyway, I guess we don't have to concern ourselves with getting those loose. Next, I'm going to go on to the coil packs. 10mm. There should be, I think, 6 or 5 of them. You can see they have the long. You don't need to take the coil packs off. Let's just take the bracket off. Just a 10mm. Guys, I generally don't use this thing very often. This is my Milwaukee air ratchet. It is really whipping this stuff off quickly. It's probably going to make a liar out of me as soon as I do this. But it definitely made taking those intake bolts out way less troublesome. I find myself using my impact more often. Oh, I'm gonna have to have a deep 10. But this does come in handy in scenarios where something's not like torqued down incredibly tight. These may require me to move it once. Oh. See what I'm talking about? That just makes your life so much easier. We'll work our way through all these. Get them out, and then we'll lay the coil packs in the garage. Same thing on both sides here. Got both the coil packs out of the way. Now guys, what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to try to remove this bracket but keep the power steering pump connected. So 15 millimeters here, there's another, oh, there in the middle, and then there's one sneaky one back here in the back. You see it down there? I think I showed it to you in the video where I disassembled the engine. So we're going to get those out, and then that will be able to, will allow us to lay this kind of forward and up here into this corner. There's actually one more on the bottom, 15 millimeter at the very bottom you can reach. So now that we've got that all loose, I'm gonna take the water pump off, but before I do that, I need to unhook all the hose clamps. Now I've drained this already as far as coolant goes, but there's still gonna be some left over. But guys, generally I use a pair of pliers to loosen this one, of course the one on the thermostat housing, and then your two heater core lines that are hooked to the water pump over there. I'm gonna get all those connections loose, and then we'll work on getting these 10 millimeters out that hold the water pump in. All right, we've got the upper, the lower, the heater core. I also took this one off. All right, so we made a mess. Like I said, there's gonna be coolant in it even if you drain it, guys. It's just no way around it. So now there's a couple things I want to take off. One being this 10 millimeter that holds our coolant crossover tube in place. And then there's 6 bolts that hold our water pump on. So 1, 2, 3, they're in a triangle, 1, 2, 3. We'll be able to get the water pump out completely away from the motor. The more I take off, it seems like it makes it easier. At some point, I think we're gonna have to get under and take the exhaust loose, obviously to get the heads off, but either way, let's knock these 10 millimeters out real quick. There'll be 8 total, 2 for the coolant crossover, 6 for the water pump. Once that is out of the way, you can also notice this is a VVT motor too. That sucks. I mean, it's not a big deal. We're going to be deleting that, right? But anyway, you can also see that it's had a water pump, or at least a water pump gasket replacement. You can see where they scraped on the block. So guys, let's move on to some more exciting stuff, and that is the valve covers, right? I want to get these valve covers off. 8 millimeter, there's 4 of them on each side. We'll get those off. That'll show us at least the rocker arms, and then maybe we'll see a little more about what was going on back there. I don't know how bad the damage is, but maybe if we get that off, we can see a little more damage on that passenger side. But let's knock these 8 millimeters out. Well, no real excitement back there on where that plug was bent. They kind of look a little laid over, but I also noticed, look, they had new valve cover gaskets, which is interesting. So somebody's put some time into this motor at least. Guys, generally I have to break the 8 millimeters for the rockers loose, and I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, roll the motor over to get the load off of that valve, but obviously the motor doesn't roll over, so we're just going to take them out like this. I've already loosened them. Here's what I like to do: run them all out, and then you can pick up the rocker stand and take them all out as one. Now I'm going to set the camera down, pick this whole rocker stand up, and we'll set those inside the shop. After getting those off on both sides, I went ahead and pulled all the push rods out, and guys, they're all straight. One thing I did notice, if you look at the ones that are all carboned up, and then these ones that are more clean, all the clean ones, or the cleaner ones, came from the passenger side, which is really odd to me. Let me know in the comments if you know anything about that. But the next 2 things I'm going to take off is I'm going to go ahead and get the, I believe these are 10s, on the center of the head. Okay, so the very top of the head, we're going to get those 10s loose. And I'm going to attempt to, I broke this on the other motor. I'd like to take the 15 out of the side of the head and see if we can get the dipstick out. Now, it's always a fight. They're really stuck in there from the factory. Chances are I'll probably break it too, but it's a 15 millimeter that goes in the side of the head there. Well, we had a couple wins. Got the 10 millimeters out up top. Also got the dipstick tube out without breaking it, which is good. I don't have to buy one now. So guys, really, here's where we're at. I'm gonna have to go down and disconnect the exhaust. I really don't want to, but there's no way I'm not gonna start taking the head bolts out without disconnecting the exhaust first. So I'm gonna crawl under there. It should be 15 millimeters. I'm gonna spray it with some PB Blaster, let it set for a while. I don't know, I guess I could go ahead and take the 15s out of the center of the head, of both the heads. We could probably go ahead and do that. It's not gonna hurt anything. And then after we get those out, I'm not gonna take you guys under the truck because it's on gravel and there's just no easy way to see it. I'm probably gonna be laying in coolant too. So, but either way, we are gonna have to get that exhaust unbolted. Well, at this point, I'm really starting to think it's hydro-locked, and here's why. I'm hearing a lot of water, which, look, you're gonna hear that when you start to loosen the head bolts, but I got the 15 millimeters out from the center and out from the top, but just some of the noises, the squishing around noises it's making, and the fact that all my bolts are coming out like disgusting. I mean, I think the motor's still toast, but I think it may have hydro lock. But either way, we do have some luck here in the fact that I haven't got the exhaust unhooked yet. I may end up sawzawing it off because we're not going to be reusing it, but somebody has replaced all the cylinder head bolts, or the manifold bolts, which is a very common thing for them to break off. Now guys, normally they are 13 millimeter. These are actually 12. I don't know where they got them, but they're obviously new because none of them are rusty and none of them are broken off. So I'm going to go ahead and knock all of those off. So 6 of those on each side. Doesn't really matter how you take them off. Now look, chances are once I get them loose, we're still not going to gain much because the exhaust is still going to be, I think it's going to be hugged up enough where I can't sneak it down. What I was hoping is if I get both sides loose, maybe I can push the whole Y pipe down, and then that'll give me the ability to finish taking the head off. But we'll see. It's getting exciting now. Check it out. By taking both sides off, look, we've got enough room to get those 15 millimeter bolts and finish taking this head off. Now, before we do that, you'll notice there's a ground strap right here. Now guys, you can loosen it up here, which is a 10 millimeter, or you can take the 15 loose, which is on the back of the head. But feel along the back side of the head. If you'll look at the front here, remember we had a ground up front, but these 4 holes, check all 4 of those holes and make sure that you don't have a bolt in both sides. If you do, you need to get those loose, obviously, before we pull the head off. Now, in my opinion, guys, it's easier to do it now. Use a ratcheting 15 to get it loose, but it's easier to do it now than the head being loose and then it moving around while you're trying to get it loose, if that makes sense. So we're gonna sneak back there, see if we can get the 15 loose, get it out of the back of the head, make sure there's not one on the other side, get it loose if there is, and then we're gonna whip these 15s out, pull these heads off, and see if we can detect what happened to this motor. So, got the head off. If you guys notice, this is a chunk of piston here. There's a ring. You look down on that cylinder, if I can get you back in there. Check that carnage out. So I'm assuming it dropped a valve. You can see the valve here. I think the head's still good though. I actually think you might be able to salvage the head, which is good. But it also, if you notice, it has Felpro head gaskets on it. So at some point, something went wrong. I don't know if it overheated or what, but I'm gonna attempt to turn the motor over backwards and see if we can loosen that up and maybe dig the rest of this piston out, and then that'll free it up where we can at least get the torque converter bolts out when we're ready to go. Well, I think this is where we're gonna stop in this video. I tried to rotate the engine the opposite way to the point where I was starting to undo the bolt for the harmonic balancer. So I think I'm gonna have to drop the pan, see if I can fish more of the piston. Obviously we're missing a big chunk of the piston. Pretty sure that's what it's hung up on. I put my pry bar down there trying to move it around, but because it's on that back cylinder and all the stuff above it, I just don't have a ton of room. So I think I'm gonna cut the exhaust off camera, and in the next video, we're gonna see if we can maybe dislodge the rest of that piston. I don't know, because this is 4-wheel drive, if we can get the oil pan off without dropping the differential. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you know that answer. I'm gonna ask around to a couple buddies and see, but I've never done that. I really do not want to pull the motor and the converter off the transmission. Generally that screws stuff up, and I really don't want to have to pull the transmission with it. But look, we may end up having to do that. I don't know. But either way, we at least figured out what exactly went wrong. I'm thinking, guys, since it had Fel-Pro gaskets, somebody's been in this before, whether it overheated. I guess we technically don't know what went wrong. Pretty sure it broke, or the valve broke, or it dropped that valve and it came in contact with the piston, and then that was all she wrote. I don't necessarily know that. I guess the cylinder could have technically been full of water and it hydrolocked and broke that stuff. Could have been a couple things, but definitely that piston back there is the reason it doesn't run, and nor was it going to. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please go smash that thumbs up button. While you're down there doing that, make sure and hit the subscribe, ring that bell notification that notifies you every single time we drop a new video, and stay tuned to see us get this motor out of this thing and get it running again.